I just realized this is the first time I've ever talked with you on a video chat.
Yeah, that's strange. That's very strange.
I mean, it's like, I've known you for like over a year now, and guess what? Guess who just joined us?
Hey!
We were just kind of wrapping up.
That's so funny.
I figured I would try just in case you guys were still going.
Okay. Yeah, Amber left about like maybe 15 minutes ago, and but yeah, it's been an interesting conversation. Several moments when we actually said, "Oh, I wish Jeff was here. We could have given us his input."
Well, that just, I mean, that happened to be a really exciting game. I did not want to leave it, so I thought about it, but it was down to the wire. So.
Did your team win?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, hey, congrats.
Yeah. So yeah, Texas Tech.
Cool.
Ended up winning by 10, but it was close all the way down to the last minute of the game. So.
Sorry. I thought I turned all phones off. Sorry.
It sounds like this ended up one of the more interesting ones with people leaving and joining and phones going off and all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah, a little back and forth.
Yeah. A lot of video freezing and.
Yes.
No, that's always good.
Yeah.
So did you bridge the SN divide though? Is that what you accomplished?
Crystal, what do you think?
No, we talked about some interesting things. I'll let Wayne decide if he wants to reschedule or if you want to keep talking. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think the original plan, like my plan, was to just kind of reschedule it, just try for it again. I mean, I was just actually thinking it was kind of interesting that we decided to go ahead with the chat. I was thinking, well, we'll just wait another 10 minutes for Jeff, and then we'll just kind of end it there. And then we ended up talking for over an hour. So I still kind of want to reschedule it because I still have my original idea in mind of like having us give our different SP perspectives on the SN divides. Because I know the thing that sparked this interest was when you talked about your experiences, Jeff, and like what was like different from mine, and you had like these miscommunications with intuitives about like how they tend to twist your words a lot and stuff like that.
Yeah, the funny thing is we actually, while watching the football game, my mother and my son were both in the room, and we actually talked about that while watching the game a little bit because my son was talking about his relationship with his mother. And so we sort of, the topic got brought up. So I was talking about it even if it wasn't in this video. Because what he was describing was I said it was kind of a classic, SN conflict because he was saying, his mother, who's an ENFP, was always trying to like respond to what she thinks the meaning of what he said is. Where he's like, no, I'm just saying straightforward, here's what I'm saying. And then vice versa. It's like she's trying to convey to him her meaning, and her words are not like he's picking on the literal words that she's saying to him instead of what she's trying to convey behind that. So they're having that conflict where he says she gets upset at him for not understanding what she means when it's different than what she says. So yes, I can relate to that a lot.
Yeah, and my theory that I brought up is that it's more noticeable for extroverted sensors than for introverted sensors. It's like your son's an ESTP, right? Mm-hmm. And so like it's because the extroverts tend to talk more, and so there's more opportunity for miscommunication. Whereas I'm listening more, like I'm listening to intuitives talk, and there's a lack of reciprocation from me, but I won't even notice whether respond to whatever I can pick up on. So
it sounds like you sort of tune out easier.
Yeah, that's basically what happens. I tune out. Maybe I won't even realize I'm tuning out, and then the conversation will just kind of go on without me.
So in a sense, it's hard to say like which is actually worse communication, because it's one thing you can say, well, if you have a, you know, it seems like a conflict that escalates because both people are like upset, they're not understanding each other, but the other can be just as problematic in any kind of relationship. If the other person tunes out and doesn't really listen to what the other person's saying, then you can have just as many problems, even if you don't have a vocal fight about it, you know.
Yeah. It's possible, and I kind of wonder like how many times that's happened to me without me even realizing it. Like,
yeah, there's probably some people that have been frustrated at you without you even knowing it, because they wanted you to pick up something that you just didn't get.
Yeah.
When Wayne said more opportunity for miscommunication, I inserted the word in my mind, more opportunity for misinterpretation, because there's more to misinterpret. They are expressing themselves more, but I would agree that it maybe just isn't one or the other, more miscommunication. It's different. My ESFP sister-in-law, she, I think, will trigger me. You know, we'll be talking and there will be something that she says that I really don't agree with, and I have to decide, okay, is this worth getting into? You know, do I even want to go there? And because she is a feeler, she can pick up on my vibes and be like, what? And then that's like the beginning of the end. And so when your EST son is talking about ENFP mom, does she pick up on that? Does she pick up on his, or does he just flat out say, I don't agree with that?
Well, obviously, I'm not there to witness most of their conversations.
So what's happening?
Well, he sometimes does, but he gets very. I mean, he's a teenager, so
yeah.
Part of it is so much teenage hormones factor into everything, and you know, he getting, you know, irritated at every little thing. But with, you know, I think it compounds that. Like with me, you know, we have the TF difference, so he's annoyed by that, but it's like even stronger with her because of the NS difference. So it's like not only is he irritated by her emotional responses, but they're emotional responses that don't even like make sense to him. Like he doesn't even understand where they come from. Like with me, he sort of can understand why I'm reacting the way I am. He just doesn't like it. Whereas with her, it's like not he doesn't like it, and he doesn't really understand where it's coming from. It seems to come out of nowhere to him, you know. So he says that she makes even less sense than I do. So.
So do sensors, so Jeff, how do you feel your communication is with the ISTP versus another ESFP?
I don't know. I guess I'd probably have to poll the other people to know what they thought about my. I mean, I feel like Wayne and I have never had any problems understanding each other. You know, the times we've talked, but you know, my younger brother's an ISTP also, and again, it kind of goes to the things that he doesn't understand are when it's like a TF thing, like when there's an emotional thing that he's like he can't fit into sort of his way of logically looking at something, and he sort of is puzzled by that. But other than that, it's like when we're talking things that are kind of straightforward, factual type stuff, we're always on the same page. I mean, even if we don't agree, like we totally understand what the other person is saying. You know, it's been a long time since I interacted with a lot of other ESFPs. I mean, there's some I talk to online now, but most of the ones I knew in my life was like a while back, like school and, you know, theater and things like that I did that I haven't really done as much in recent years. So a lot of my interactions with people offline have been work and, you know, people I've known through work and other stuff, which has been more SJs than anything else. And then, you know, my family members. So I haven't had a whole lot of experience, like since I've been aware of, you know, personality differences and stuff, I mean, with other ESFPs other than online. Online, I feel like the ones I've known, we communicate like perfectly, where it seems like the stuff they say about like where you're just in sync with the other type and you just know what the other person is thinking, or you can finish their sentences and stuff. It feels like that. With the few that I really have interacted much with, it's like we just know exactly. We even know like how the other person is going to react to something, which is like sort of cool and also kind of frustrating at the same time, because we're the type of people that don't want to be predictable. So it's like there's this sort of combination of positive and negative to that, because it's like we know what the other person is going to react, and then we're like trying to switch it up anyway to sort of like
it becomes a competition.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens with. I think naturally with two SPs of any type, but maybe even more so with two of the same type, there sort of is it's sort of a, even without even thinking about it, sort of a subconscious competition where you start trying to one-up each other in something, Because what I've said is, when we talked about, a while back, I talked with somebody about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that I think the author of that was an ENFJ. That's my diagnosis of his type. And there were a few things I thought, he said some really good stuff in the book, but there were a few things that he just didn't quite get about how people are different. And there were certain things he said that just like SPs are never going to be on board with. And one of them was the part where he said, you have to stop seeing things as like win-lose situations and try to make it into a win-win where everybody, there's not like a competition going on. But I said the problem with that is with SPs is like we basically try to win every moment. So there's no, it's hard to frame it that way, but it doesn't mean that, that all SPs are like constantly trying to like, denigrate somebody for, oh, you're a loser or you lost this. It's not like always like a mean-spirited or a taunting thing. It's just a very subtle kind of subconscious, there's always a winner or a loser in every situation. And it doesn't have to be like the loser is some kind of devastating thing. It can just be like really quick and then it's over and you move on to something else. It's like if two people tell a joke or two people, one person says one thing and the other one kind of responds to it. It's just sort of the kind of mental thing of, oh, this person, kind of got the better of that situation, but then you move on and it's not a big deal. So, but the concept of, you can't frame it in terms of there's a winner or loser in a situation. I said that I don't think that an SP type person is ever going to fully get on board with that, because they can't. It's like so natural to us to be competitive that way, and it doesn't. Again, it doesn't.
SSP or is STP as competitive?
Oh, sometimes more so. I think they're just competitive about different things.
Introverted then? Wayne, do you relate to that?
I kind of wonder though if it is a extroverted SP thing, because I definitely see it in the ESFPs that I know and the ESTPs that I've known. I don't necessarily see it so much in myself. For me, it's more of an internal thing. Like I usually won't outwardly try to look competitive, but it's kind of hard to tell because I haven't interacted with that many ISTPs or ISFPs. And if I'm dealing with like ESTPs or ESFPs, it's like, well, I should. Yeah, it's like I'm like out of my element. So it's like there's no point in trying to compete with them.
I would say what it seems like to me from my observation is that the introverted SPs, it's more about what they do than what they say. They still compete, but it's more like it's almost sort of exactly. It's a physical competition. Sometimes even can be a little bit delayed. It's because they're not necessarily looking for as instant a reaction to what they do. But I mean, I think there's a ton of STP or ISTP athletes, and even if they're not necessarily athletic, there's some sort of competition that they're involved in a lot of times. And again, like I said, sometimes it can be really subtle. So it may not be something that even within the moment as it's happening, that an ISTP might not necessarily think, oh, I'm being competitive here. But if you really looked back at it afterwards, you might say, oh, I think I sort of saw where I was in this situation. So, obviously I can't speak for Wayne or anything, but it just seems like there's more of rather than like he said, an outward competition, that it's a lot more subtle, but that's still there. Like it's still driving, circumstances.
Although I actually do notice on the NF Geeks forum, now that there's a few of us ISTPs on there, I get a sense that we're actually trying to compete against each other to try to be like I am the ISTP representative on this forum. kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that on, because I'm also on the ESFP forum, and that's the funny thing there is most of the threads are not started by the ESFPs, they're started by other types asking questions,
Mm-hmm.
and then but the rest of us will respond, and it's very obvious to me that our responses are always like trying to sort of best the next one. Yeah, we're always in like, and because of that, it's like we can't ever fully acknowledge, you know, what somebody else said. It's like we respond to it, but we have to sort of, you know, put ourselves out there too. So it's kind of funny to watch that because it's an interesting mix too of people, because we've got in that group we've got people from a bunch of different countries, and a lot of which don't have a particular strong grasp on English. So there's some confusion in what people are even saying. So it's kind of fun. But
start a brawl online.
But yeah, I think I've had enough experience with ISTPs. I think actually more so than ISFPs, although I have known some ISFPs, but again more online than in person, because it's been a while since I was really in the kind of environment. I think when I was still doing acting and theater, that there were a whole lot more you know, SFPs that I interacted with on a regular basis, but in recent years not nearly as much. So so I haven't seen as many examples of ISFPs being competitive. But I have seen a few, and again, online situations, you know, forums and things, that there's sort of some evidence of that. And if you look at sports forums rather than stuff that's about like typology or, you know, theoretical stuff, you see a lot more SPs on those type of forums, and, you know, other things like music and movies and stuff like that, stuff that, you know, where it's interest based and not personality based, but you can still see some of those personalities come forward anyway in the interactions you see with people. Yeah. I've seen it more often in those kind of situations. Because in the sense, I mean, there's threads that, you know, like on sports forums, on the Texas Tech football forum that I'm on, every week there's a thing, the lookalike thread, where you're looking the roster of the opposing team and trying to find pictures of people that they look like. So there's like comparative, you know, and that sort of is a competition within itself, you know, so people are trying to find the best, you know, compared some photos and stuff like that. So, and then there's another one they usually do that's like whoever the next opponent, like this week it was West Virginia, somebody starts I hate West Virginia because, and then people come up with, you know, a bunch of goofy reasons why to hate West Virginia. If the team is actually a real rival, then a lot of the ones are a little more serious, not necessarily serious, but like accurate. Whereas when it's a team that would, you know, they don't usually play, then people have to kind of stretch a little bit and say things like, you know, they never put the toilet paper on right and stuff like that. You know, you have to get a little bit more creative with some of those things. But those type of things, you know, are sort of competitions within themselves.
And so you say Stephen R. Covey is an ENFJ, and there's things in there that you don't jive with. Does that mean that that's often the personality with which you clash more?
Well, I think I've told you before that I think more than anything the NTJs, especially ENTJs, have been the ones that I clash the most with. But ENFJ, I haven't known as many, you know, and it's funny because I know, you know, David Kersey called the ENFJ like the teacher type personality. It's very possible that I had several teachers growing up that were ENFJs, and I just didn't know it because I never was sitting there analyzing their personalities. So I don't know. But as far as since I've been aware of type, I haven't known very many ENFJs, period, that I know of. And the ones I have, I think there's been a little bit interesting. We talked about competition because I think there's been a little of that with them also. Because ENFJs, I think, possibly are the type most similar to ESFPs in the way that they sort of seek out attention from people. They just do it for different reasons. You know, I think for ESFPs, it's sort of just, it's for the attention itself. Like we just have fun, you know, enjoying people making a big deal about us, whereas ENFJs seem to be a little bit more, there's more of an agenda about it. It's more of something they're actually trying to accomplish in some way. It's like, hey, look at me because I'm going to tell you something that's important in some way. And it may not be some earth-shattering thing, but I mean, there's a little bit more of a purpose behind it. You know, it's more of a, but they do have that kind of attention-seeking quality. So that much I've noticed, and especially when it comes to like the Facebook groups and things like that, we can seem somewhat similar in that, you know, kind of ubiquitous quality. You know, it's like we're always wanting to kind of be at the forefront. We just sort of have different reasons for doing that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I think we've clashed only when there's like a difference of opinion that's strong in a way that there's a reason to have a disagreement about it. I guess that's the best way to put that. You know, if there's a particular value or quality that the ENFJ is really trying to get across, and I don't see it the same way, then that can be a clash. But you know, I don't like Oprah Winfrey for one. That's a good example.
Okay.
Well, she's usually typed as ENFJ, and I don't have any problem believing that. But I think she's got to have the biggest ego of anyone in history. You know.
I think that's interesting.
She's got a
magazine.
Yeah, she's got a magazine where she's on the cover of every magazine. Like, even I wouldn't do that. I mean,
come on, you would.
Well, she's got her own cable network now.
Right. I mean, she wants to be like. I think she wants to be like the Lord Master of the universe. I mean, she pretty much like self-appointed herself like the coronator of the president when she's brought Barack Obama to the forefront of here. I'm going to get him elected president. So yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I can see, but I see that as more of a FE-FI clash than a NISE. Your value system just came out right there. You didn't approve of that, or arrogance, as you put it. Where when I'm trying to figure out what would make you clash with, that there would be some sort of sensing, intuitive difference. The things that you value, I guess, is more FI, not...
Yeah, maybe. I don't really know, it's hard for me to draw the line when it comes to, function things. What?
I forgot. You don't like us doing that.
Well,
conversation with us. We're doing this very thing, S&N.
It's not that I oppose, like, examining it. It's more like the overconfidence that some people speak with when it comes to labeling like every single behavior as being the product of a certain function. And I'm like, I don't think it is as apparent as some people seem to think it is. Like, they seem to just jump to these real quick conclusions of, oh, this was a demonstration of this. And I'm like, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be, but you don't really know that for sure. And somebody who has even examined it from a scientific point of view, like Dario Nardi, has said, it's not that simple. There's not like a part of the brain where like this part is your NE, and when this activates, that's that. He says not like that. He said even when you see examples of what could be called that, it's a combination of like 7 or 8 different things in the brain happening at the same time. And so the idea that I just think it's ridiculous when people will see like an interview with some celebrity or something like that, and they're like, oh, well, I clearly determined this person was an INFJ based on the amount of FE they were demonstrating it from 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 3 minutes in this video, and I'm like, come on, you don't know, you don't know that. It's stuff like that just kind of drives me batty. But I mean, the discussion of it and the inquiry, trying to figure out elements of people like that, I don't have any problem with. It's more just the jumping to conclusions. That would be, you talked about the NISE clash. That would be where it is right there. Is and we talked about that before. Is these immediate overconfident conclusions that some NI types do, and I think. And I brought up Nardi. One of the things I thought was most interesting and kind of funny in his presentation about neuroscience of personality was when he talked about showing his test groups a picture and then taking it away and then asking them like what they remember about the picture. And he basically said, when he immediately asked afterwards, the SE types, basically the SPs, were the ones who were able to recall the most details from the picture. Whereas like when he brought them all back like a week later and did the same thing, it was the SJs that were able to recall more details about the picture. It was like long term they remembered more of the details. The NE types, meanwhile, were the ones that just didn't remember very many details about the picture at all either time, And the NI types were the ones that remembered details and they were wrong.
I don't argue it. I'm sure that's very true.
And I was listening to that at work. You know, I had the headphones on and I had it on my laptop and I listened to it at work and I actually laughed out loud when he got to that part because I was like, "See, that's what I'm trying to say."
That's your strength. It makes no sense to you. How could someone not? I know that's my weakness.
It's like that's why, you know, to me, I've said that the NE doesn't bother me as much because it's like, yeah, it might be all over the place, but it's like they don't claim to know the stuff. It's just like they're just kind of, you know. Whereas the NI types will like claim they know, they're just wrong.
Well, see, that's funny because, like, in my experience, the NI types are usually right when they try to guess stuff about me.
Well, you know.
But I guess it's only when it's about anything that's not pragmatic or specific details. Like,
right, I was going to say the factual details they get wrong.
That's true.
Being set up, you'd probably be like, no, that's not true.
Yeah, so that's it's like the NI is it could be accurate more in terms of perception of, you know, people's emotions or the qualities somebody is experiencing, but the facts of a situation, not so much, like, because it's just not going to be able to process it the same way, you know. So I just thought that was really interesting and sort of validating for some of the things that I had said in the past about jumping to conclusions, because that's what it always seemed like to me. And I can see, and again, but it's one of those things, and Crystal and I talked about this too when we did a video together, is that what I had to come to grips with is just, you know, that is just as natural as, you know, my instincts are, and I can't judge it so harshly where a person is doing what is so natural to them that it's not intentional, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you know, you know, NJ types are not trying to misunderstand me, and they're not trying to get facts wrong. It's just there's a natural tendency that happens when you perceive things that way, and that the things that they are accurate about, like, you know, it's better for me to kind of acknowledge those things, realize that, yeah, that there's some things where they're specially suited to be good at this because of that. And that's what all this stuff is really about, is, you know, what are your natural talents, you know, find the things that you are good at and try to make the best of those. And it doesn't mean that you don't spend any time talking about your weaknesses, but don't dwell on them so much, you know, kind of the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, we lose Crystal?
Yeah.
I forced her out with all my NI bashing.